The Nigeria-South Africa Chamber of Commerce, in its May breakfast meeting, focused on the very apt and timely topic, leading digital, turning technology for business transformation. Considering the fourth industrial revolution driven by digital technology and the opportunities for Nigeria, Mr Bola Adegbomire, CEO Lemuel Technologies and keynote speaker, in an interview gave insight on the thrust of his presentation.
In a nutshell, the talk was about how companies can actually respond appropriately in terms of driving productivity, profit, and performance during this digital age using digital technology. And then, of course, I try lay down to them exactly the changing dynamics of the industry and as well as how they could actually embark on that journey and embark on it successfully.
We're in the fourth industrial revolution. And so what are those dynamics that are changing the way businesses are approaching their operations with the deployment of technology?
Okay, that's actually quite interesting, because at the start of my presentation, one of the first things that I talked about was general purpose technology and showing the audience the transition in terms of GPTs, how we've evolved, or rather the evolution of GPTs over time. So obviously I talked about from the steam engine to the automobile, electricity, and now the internet and the different iterations of the internet. So in terms of digital technology, what is happening in the digital technology space? The important thing about the internet as a GPT is that it's still evolving, and it will probably keep evolving. So of course, in the digital era, is all about companies looking at how they can and will use digital technologies, deploy it appropriately in order to actually drive the business. And if you actually look at it, if you speak to a lot of the consulting houses now, there's what is actually now being referred to as IGDP, which is the contribution of the internet to your GDP as a country.
When you look at the contribution of the internet to GDP, we are talking about economic growth and transformation, and infrastructure is very key. How do you assess infrastructure to drive technology in Africa and even Nigeria at the moment?
Okay, in terms of IGDP and infrastructure to drive it, my personal opinion, obviously different from what you might hear from the skeptics, is that the infrastructure is not where it should be. However, we've come a long way in leaps and bounds. I mean, if you look at a country like Nigeria alone, today we have about 4 or 5 undersea cables bringing capacity into the country. 2 things actually inhibit the growth of the internet in terms of e-commerce and all that here in Nigeria or Africa as a whole. But if I look at Nigeria, what I would say is 1, power, and 2, the ability to actually distribute this capacity within the nation. So whereas the capacity exists, but actually distributing it around the nation is where the providers are having issues, obviously right-of-way issues and all that. So that's why you would find a lot of them actually focusing on wireless technology. But it would interest you to know that for about 2.5 years now, I've actually had fiber to the house. So it's really, really grown. It's changed. The infrastructure, like I said, is not what it should be, but we've come a long way, and I think Nigeria and Africa as a whole, we're only going to get better. The good thing about it for us is also the flip side is the fact that we don't have as much legacy technologies to deal with as the advanced countries. So in terms of us adopting new technology, it's faster and easier for us.
In terms of using technology to drive efficiency in businesses in Nigeria, from your experience in Lemuel Technologies, can you give us so far how it has been in the efficiency operations?
Well, I would say a lot of businesses and customers have done well. But like I was saying today, that in terms of actually driving efficiency, driving productivity and profit in their business using digital technologies, they need to focus on starting from looking at their customer experience. What exactly will they do in terms of customer experience? How will they engage their customers from when the customer starts to engage with them to when the customer leaves. So the different touch points need to be brought together as a single entity in terms of how they want their brand to be represented, even when people engage with them across digital channels. And then, of course, we talked about the need for them to actually evaluate their core operations, reinvent their business models, develop a digital vision, and of course, importantly for any big business, put some governance around it and ensure that there's leadership at the highest levels. There are few companies that I've seen in Nigeria who have chief digital officers. This is something that big enterprises need to look at, somebody who's got exec level support or exec level standing, who can actually drive the digital vision for the company.
Now, in terms of deepening our Nigerian financial market, fintech is a major development in digital space. Some regulators are concerned about fintech threats, but what do you see the role of fintech in deepening our Nigerian financial system and penetration?
In a nutshell, if you ask me, I believe that the only way that we can actually achieve the financial inclusion that we're looking for is for us as a nation, government and citizens to actually embrace fintech. That's the only way we can achieve the 100% or whatever percentage. Forgive me, I'm not sure what percentage the government has set out as a target, but for me to be 100% financial inclusion, and fintech is the only way. Because again, in all the other unbanked places, you have the technology, especially mobile technology. So there's mobile computing power with people. That's really the place to go. And I think from a CBN perspective, that's actually being driven. It could be faster, but they are actually doing a good job, because again, I've seen the releases and all that about enabling the telcos and all that as super agents for mobile payments, mobile tech, payment, financial technology and all that. So fintech is the way to go. Without fintech, I don't see how we'll get to the financial inclusion levels that the government is looking at.
Chairman of the Nigeria-South Africa Chamber of Commerce, Mr Foluso Phillips, spoke on the topic of discourse with his takeaways.
I think the main thing is that there is transformation in the air, and the transformation is universal, is global, and is being driven principally through the digital technology and the changes that's been made possible through the concept of using digitization around the world. And what you're finding is that a lot of people are being innovative. My definition of innovation is trying to find the next level of customer convenience. If you look at all the things that have been innovated around the world, it's always trying to make things more convenient for the customer, the person to whom you provide that service. So with the concept, with that behind your mind, and the platform that is created whereby you can have the Ubers of this world or the Airbnb and all those other interesting global services that's being provided, it means that a lot of companies are now being challenged to look around and see how they too can move one step further in this value chain of customer service. Organizations are now being encouraged to look into how they can devise for themselves, especially with the ease of digitization that's taking place and the skills that a lot of young people are developing in being able to support digitization process. Organizations are being challenged now that if you look at the value chain of activities that takes place in your organization, from internal systems right through to the customer, how can we convert it? How can we disrupt it such that the customer is getting increasing convenience from this? And if this is taken as a fundamental foundation, therefore all the things that follow would lead to this sort of disruption. So the talk today was all about that. You know, there's a lot that's going on in the world, in the digital world. The disruption is phenomenal, and some are extremely global, some are personal to organizations. But the key thing about it is that things are changing at a phenomenal rate. And the fundamental message is that you just cannot afford to sit back and feel that because you're being successful right now, you will continue to be successful. And he gave several examples of organizations in the past who were masters of what was going on. And today, they sort of have disappeared because they've been sort of removed from the playing field because they didn't play ball. So I think those are the key things I picked up today.
Digital technology is creating new opportunities for economies across the globe. For businesses in Nigeria, it is a new dawn for innovation, creativity, value creation, and unique customer experience.